What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another Tournament After Action Report with me, your host, Joshua Josie Howard. Today, we're going to be talking about the Socal Open Teams Tournament that I played recently in San Diego, California with the Githammer squad. We have 5 games to go over, so hopefully we can do this a little bit faster than we did the Phoenix one. To start off with, just want to give a couple of shoutouts. Firstly, to the FLG team, the Frontline Gaming Squad, that was able to put this on. It was a lot of fun. I think it was 200 players coming out to this for the 40K teams event, and then there was like 4 or 5 other games that were also going on. Don't know as much about that, but overall, really fun event just across the entire thing. This was my first 8-man teams event ever, and while I wasn't technically captain of the team in all, realistically, I was the captain of the team. I was the one really pushing the matrix, really doing a lot of the pairing, and not to toot my own horn too much, but I was definitely the one really driving a lot of the decisions that were being made as a team across the entire event. So a quick backstory about the things that led up to this event. So originally, the Githammer squad, we ended up bringing 2 squads of 2 teams of 8. And originally, my team was supposed to be Jason playing Grey Knights, me playing Guard, Keaton playing Death Guard, Luis playing Sisters, Michael playing Orcs, Omar playing CSM, or technically Emperor's Children, Victor playing Blood Angels, and Justin playing Tyranids. However, as me, Ben, and Omar are getting ready to drive down from Orange County to San Diego, we get a message in their Discord as our captain Michael says, "Guys, we have an emergency. We need somebody to play. Don't really care who it is. We just need to plug someone in." And I had asked my roommate Ben to come down and kind of be my secretary in certain ways. I was going to ask him to do a lot of tracking and kind of let people know how the games are going, how everybody else is doing across all the different tables, so that the people who can push can actually try and make some of those risky decisions necessary in order to try and find the right ways to win. However, my roommate Ben is also a competent Tau player, so as we are getting ready to drive down, we had just left Omar's place. We turn around on the freeway, we go back. Ben builds a list with all of the Tau stuff that Omar just happened to have recently bought, and Omar frantically paints up a last couple of things just to make sure it's going to not get taken off the table when we get to the event. We throw it all in the car, we drive back down, and suddenly Ben, playing his Retaliation Cadre Tau, is taking over for Justin and his Tyranids. Feel really bad for Justin. This is unfortunately the 3rd event where he was not able to participate because he had some issues with the AC and with a very young child. He was not able to stay in Palm Springs due to the heat. And then the last RTT we played at, he played against me. His stomach wasn't feeling good. He had some food poisoning and he had to duck out early. And this event, he was getting sick like the night before as we're getting ready to play for this big teams event. So hopefully Justin's health will be better for upcoming events. But anyway, we ended up having a last-minute substitute with Ben, and that was a lot of fun. I think it actually improved our matrix because there were some matchups that we were expecting to struggle into that suddenly we had a second army to put into as defenders or attacker. Anyway, we get there. We're being hosted by our Blood Angels player, Victor. He and his wife have recently bought a place. It looked fantastic, but that's not what you're here to hear about. Let's start talking about the game. So, one of the things that we ended up doing was our captain Michael called out another team called Get #Wrecked, being led by Jeff Poole. And Jeff's team was running a Wolf Jail list, a Monster Mash Tyranids, Chaos Knights War Dog spam, an Eldar list with the Avatar, Demons list, Custodes, an interesting Necron's Obeisance Phalanx list, and then this really offbeat shooty CSM list. And a lot of us, we didn't really know what to make of the Obeisance Phalanx list that was being brought, but we also weren't really sure what to make of the shooty CSM list until a couple of our players got to see it in action at an RTT that was happening the day before, and they were telling us that it was absolutely wild. We'll talk a lot more about that because that's the player I ended up playing against. So at the very beginning of pairings, we actually put me out as first defender with the idea that I should be able to get probably an 8 going up against this CSM list, especially if I get table choice. And luckily for us, we end up getting the exact spot where they give us the CSM as the attacker. I end up taking it as the defender, and I end up putting it on Games Workshop Terrain Layout 7, which was table 4 for us. And overall, as we do the rest of the pairings, we're feeling pretty good about it. Based on the matrix that we had established, we were expecting that we were going to be coming out of this with the top end of a draw. We were looking at an 84 based on how our pairings matrix was looking. But let's go ahead and start talking about my game. Sorry, it doesn't have the objectives already built in. I'm just pulling it from the player pack, and you guys will live with it. It's going to be fine. Oh yeah, we haven't talked about my list. So I was bringing Lord Solar with a Platoon command squad and unit of Catachan jungle fighters, a Tempestus command squad with 10 Scions attached to it with maximum melta, maximum plasma, 2 additional units of Catachan jungle fighters, 1 Chimera, a Taurox, not because I think the Taurox is necessarily better, but I needed to shave 5 points off the list somewhere, and going from a Chimera to a Taurox seemed like a very natural way to do it. 3 units of Bullgryn, and this was before the nerf to Bullgryn, so they were still at 180 points. 1 Hellhound with the Flamer and Multi-Melta, 1 Leman's Battle Tank with Multi-Melta and Las Cannon, 2 Leman's Exterminators with Multi-Melta Las Cannon, the big Scion Squad like we already talked about, not an additional one, and then 2 units of Tempestus Aquilons. So, like we were saying, we got to use Aquilons and Vespids, but we were not using the new points or the new FAQs. So, secret missions were still in play, and we also had the linchpin FAQ wasn't there, and you could do like multiple accursed cultists, surge moves every single turn, blah blah blah. We were not playing with any of the new stuff. Let's go ahead and talk about the CSM list that Jay was playing for his team. It was Chaos Space Marines, Pact-Bound Zealots with a Warpsmith, 1 Cultist Mob, 2 units of Chaos Bikers, and this is where it gets a little bit weird. It is 3 Predator Destructors, 3 Chaos Vindicators, 2 Hellbrutes, 2 Mauler Fiends, and 2 Venom Crawlers. And that's the entire list. Basically, what this list does, it has way more shooting than you do. It has a couple of fairly threatening melee pieces in the Mauler Fiends if they can actually get into combat with things. And even if you're able to kill multiple Vindicators per turn, which is something that a lot of lists are going to struggle with, one, if you get into combat with them, they ignore the hit penalty, so they are just going to shoot into whatever is in combat with them. And 2, they're also going to just have the 3 Chaos Predator Destructors, and everything in his army is going to have sustained and lethal 5s. So he just shoots really, really hard. And I was talking to him after, he said there's not really anything in the game that is supposed to be good into his army. Now, looking at this already, I realized that we were doing something a little bit wrong. One of the things that I forgot to check, and based on the terrain pieces that we had actually picked up, was we had it set up such that these were 2-inch ruins instead of the 4-inch ruins, meaning that we were playing them as though you could just drive directly over them. That's incorrect now that I look at it, but I didn't notice it at that time, and we played it, and we both agreed, and I actually wonder how much that would have changed the way that we end up playing this game. But unfortunately, that's neither here nor there. We played it as we played it, and that is what ended up happening. Man, I think I really screwed up because I didn't properly check what the terrain layout looked like. Oh well. So we ended up playing Mission 1. This was on Linchpin with Fog of War on Tipping Point. So just a reminder, that means our deployment zones look like this. And unfortunately, at the very beginning, I start making mistakes in this game pretty much right away. One of the things that I do is I have a unit of Bullgryn stretched out right about here, and unfortunately, that means that they were visible in such a way that it was down this firing line. And it meant I lost 3 Bullgryn to a couple of Predator Destructors instantly, right off the bat. Which hurt, but it wasn't the end of the world. But basically, Jay was able to do a little bit of damage on turn 1, put a little bit of pressure on. He didn't actually score very good secondaries. However, on my turn, my general game plan was I was going to try and stop him from scoring this linchpin a couple of times by putting a bunch of Catachan here. But the other mistake that I made was I put the Catachan, Taurox, and Chimera something like this with the idea that I was going to spill guys out. However, they were actually far enough back here that he was able to put multiple Predator Destructors, or like a Vindicator and some Destructors here. And one of the issues that actually arose because I didn't properly check the map was he had a Vindicator here drive over and be able to shoot. Now, I don't know if they're supposed to be able to fit through this section right in here, but we were playing as though they could, and that suddenly meant that all these Catachan that were here, I lost 16 of them and went down to only 4 of them. 1 unit of 1 and 1 unit of 3, which was really bad, because it meant that I no longer had the OC necessary to jump over the wall and deny this primary over and over again, which was core to the way that I was trying to play. But again, like I said, it might have been because I played this wrong, or this terrain wrong. Anyway, going into my first turn, things started going wrong even faster than that. Like it just continued to go wrong. So one of the major things to know about playing on this mission was that it was fog of war, which means everything is covered and everything has or you're not allowed to use any core strats other than new orders turn 1. So my general game plan was I had like one guy here and like 3 guys here, and Jay had like 3 bikes on this objective, and then he had like another vehicle or something. I patched both my battle shocks with my Catachan. What my idea was I was going to run them over, and they were going to chuck a grenade and try and kill enough of these bikes that I was going to be able to put enough OC on this objective because he couldn't overwatch me, such that I could deny his primary on turn 2. But you've already realized the issue. You can't grenade on turn 1. And by the time we both remembered that, I had already put my guys here, and I was not able to put to kill the Chaos Bikers at all. What I should have done had I realized that is he had a Mauler Fiend like right here getting ready to run at my home objective. If I had taken the 3 guys and just like strung them out like this, suddenly the Mauler Fiend loses a ton of movement and it can't put pressure on my home objective and actually gets there on like turn 2 or 3. Like it gets there really, really quickly. But that's a major mistake that goes through. The other thing that happens is Jay has a Vindicator right about here, and I take some Bullgryn from around here, jump them out to here, whatever it was, and this was a 6-inch charge. Or maybe it was a 5-inch charge. I think it was a 5. I think it was a 5. Either way, I come out, I go for this charge, because I know that even though the Bullgryn are going to get shot at with no penalty from the Vindicator in just a moment on his next turn, my whole goal is to just string out Bullgryn here to, 1, deny him this primary yet again, and just as importantly, make sure that his army can't move. Because if this Vindicator is stuck here, then everything behind it can't move through it either. Unfortunately, I failed the charge, and I can't re-roll it because we're on Fog of War, so I just have this unit of Bullgryn here, and they get slaughtered. And at this point, I had one of my teammates come over and be like, "So Josh, how's it going? And is it as bad as it sounds?" And I'm saying, I'm gonna get slaughtered. I've made a couple of crucial mistakes already on turn 1, and this was already going to be a matchup that was going to be rather difficult for me to try and hold. I think if I had gone first, it would have been a very different story, but because I went second and he was able to instantly put the pressure on me, everything started falling apart very quickly. So on his turn 2, Jay ends up scoring 13 for scoring his home and 2 out in the middle of the board. And this dies my Catachan die over here. He takes a Mauler Fiend and brings it around and charges it into the 3 Bullgryn that I still have on this objective and actually wipes all of them. No, he kills 2 of them, but that's still enough to flip the point. He ends up putting a lot of pressure, and basically by the end of his turn 2, he has like 3 Vindicators just hanging out here, and he puts his Warpsmith like right here where I can no longer try and assassinate it for any reason, like with my Aquilons or whatever. And the Mauler Fiend that was supposed to be stuck here ends up getting to here, and I think it gets a charge off into a tank that I had posted up here just because I was expecting that I was going to need to kill a bunch of his stuff all at once going into my turn 2. And nothing went according to my plan. Like, he just had so much pressure. The Bullgryn weren't able to do any damage to his Mauler Fiends. My tanks were not really able to get anything done. By his turn 3, he ended up having a Mauler Fiend on my home objective. And I think the only cool play I made this entire game actually came off of Aquilons. And Aquilons are still absolutely cracked. But basically, what I was able to do was he had like a unit of cultists and like a unit of bikers kind of spread out in here. And I rapid ingress some Aquilons in a way that they could not be shot by, like, there's like a Vindicator and like a Predator that were not able to shoot them that turn. And via this rapid ingress, I was able to use the fact that they have a lot of assault weapons to charge them on and deny his home objective on turn 4. And this ended up being a 9-point swing because he wasn't holding his home for linchpin, which means it's -3 on that. And then all 3 of these objectives were also -2. So -6 on all the no man's land objectives. And that was a really cool play that ended up pulling off on turn 4. Unfortunately, he still maxed primary anyway. And there's a world where I might have been able to get to that 51-point mark if I had just scored my own points, because I was not going to be able to deny any of his primary. And then on turn 4, I was tabled. I lost my entire army. He just does way too much damage for me to stand up to, and it was just kind of a brutal slaughtering. So, ultimately, in this game, I had predicted that I was going to be scoring an 8 for my team, and I ended up scoring 0. And I ended up spending a lot of time, because the game finished relatively quickly. I spent a lot of time talking to Jay and asked, so what does your army struggle with? And he's like, nothing. Like, I have not lost a single game since I started playing this list. And by the end of the event, he ended up being the event's top scoring player, and the only person who held him to less than, I think, a 20 was Junior, I'm going to say it wrong, Junior F. Leahy, Junior F. Yehi, like an 1800 ELO player, held him to a 713, right? Like, this list was absolutely nuts, and Jay just bodied people. He said that he beat an Imperial Knights player 100 to 10 because he tabled him at the end, or by the top of turn 2. Like, this list is absolutely nasty, and I'm expecting I'm going to be seeing more of it in the future. Overall, though, while I missed my projection by 8 points, almost everyone else in my team also was missing their projections. My Orcs player playing to Demons missed their projection by 6. Sisters, Grey Knights, Tau all missed our projections by 2. Our Blood Angels player missed it by 4, and the only 2 people who did better than our projections were our Death Guard player got a 16 instead of a 10, like we were expecting, and our CSM player got a 13 instead of a 12. So ultimately, we ended up falling behind. Our prediction was 84 points. We ended up scoring 67 across the board, which is not what we were hoping to do. But overall, we still had a good time. The Get Wrecked crew was a lot of fun, and I'm hoping to play against them again soon. In round 2, we ended up playing up against Team Puppin Suds, and I know a couple of their players because they've come to a couple of the Githammer RTTs, or the technically at squad marks, but they're run by my team captain, Michael. And Team Puppin Suds was running Bringers of Flame Sisters, a guard army with Bullgryn, a CSM melee list. I think it was Renegade Raiders, a Monster Mash Tyranids list, a Nurgle Demons list, a Orcs Dread Mob list, a Hypercrypt Necrons list with a Monolith, and an Imperial Knights list. A pretty normal Imperial Knights list. And for this one, I wasn't super fond of our matrix overall into this team, just because we had a lot more oranges and reds than we had greens and blues, and ultimately, by the time we were done pairing, we were looking at a projected 77 points, which is still within a draw, but not something that we were particularly excited about. Something that was really unusual for us in this event was I had ended up pairing myself to potentially be one of the hammers. Imperial Knights versus Guard is generally a very good matchup for the Guard, especially if I have access to Bullgryn. And because these are cheap Bullgryn still, ended up being very good for us. I ended up pairing up against Cody and his Imperial Knights. And Cody was running Canis Rex, a Knight Lancer with the Mysterious Guardian enhancement, 4 Helverins, 3 Warglaves, and a Calidus. Ultimately, a pretty normal looking Knight list. And we ended up playing this one on WTC map 53, which for us was table 7. Now, I had projected myself to win 15-5 in this matchup, meaning that I was supposed to win somewhere between 26 and 30 point advantage. And we were playing this one on Scorched Earth with Swift Action and on Tipping Point. Now, again, Swift Action is the one where you can advance or fall back and do actions if you're a Battleline unit. I don't think this one came up particularly often in this game, but, you know, it's there. This game started going right for me relatively quickly. So one of the first things that I did is I took my Catachan in the Taurox, and it went here. And my Catachan with the Chimera started off here. And on my first turn, I drew Extend Battle Lines and Establish Locus. And so I gave this Chimera, so it scouted 6, and then I gave it move, 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 so I ended up moving 13, and it took the guys inside, and the guys ended up going like here, somewhere that was going to be very difficult for my opponent to ever get to them. And then the Chimera moved 13 to somewhere in here, such that it was touching the objective, establishing a locus, and just generally clogging up this part of the board. Then, the other thing that happened was this Taurox scouted here, and I advanced it to here, where it stayed an inch back from the wall, but just kind of hanging out right here with the idea that I was going to be disgorging guys to put a bunch of OC on this objective on the next turn. Cody had a Warglaive that was here, and it rushed in, and he wanted to make sure that he didn't kill the Chimera here, such that he could charge it, kill it in melee, and then consolidate or charge in such a way that he was going to be scoring area denial. Because if this Chimera lived, at best he was only scoring 2 points in area denial. And after some shooting and then his charge, this Chimera remained alive on 1. Which was really big for me because it meant that the Chimera could continue being annoying for a little while longer, and 2, he was only scoring 2 on area denial. Then on my turn 2, I actually had a very entertaining turn once again. I was able to play one of my fun OC tricks that I can do with Catachan and Gaunt's Ghosts. So Cody had put an Armiger and Canis Rex, I think it was Canis Rex, right here. And he also had like his Knight Lancer, something like this. And on my first turn, I had advanced Bullgryn, and they were hanging out right about here. I'm sure you can see where this is going. So, on my turn 2, all of the Catachan get out, and I'm able to put 20 OC on this objective with just the guys. Cody chooses to overwatch them and kills enough of them such that there's only 14 OC. And you will notice that 14 is less than 18. But you know what's more than 18? 21. That's right. What I was able to do is after that, after he does his overwatch, there's a spot where I can drop Gaunt's Ghost right here to give the duty and honor order during my movement phase, or at the end of my movement phase, such that instead of 14, I now had 21 OC on this objective because each guy was 3 OC, and that meant that I was denying my opponent's turn 2 primary on Scorched Earth, and every objective you can deny on Scorched Earth is a massive swing, because if you want to score max on primary, you need to burn 2 objectives, or you need to burn your opponent's home objective and score all of your own primary throughout the course of the game. And now that I take that down, that's one differential point that is already going over to me. The other major thing that happens on this turn is these Bullgryn charge, and they tie up the Lancer, and they stay in combat with that Lancer for like 3 fight phases, man. It is absolutely ridiculous how effective these Bullgryn end up being throughout the course of the game. The other thing that I end up doing on turn 2 that really changes the game is, I think his Calidus was like here, and it's really, really hard to screen out Aquilons super effectively, so I drop them like here and just grenade the Calidus to death, so his scoring ability is just cut in half almost instantly. After that, the game is mostly just me using my Bullgryn to keep Canis Rex and the Lancer away. And my Leman Russes just slowly pick off his Armigers over and over again. The game looked favorable for me pretty much the entire time, but at some point, I remember that Canis Rex was sitting on like 10 wounds, and I shot a Leman Russ battle tank into it, and Canis is saving on 3s, because he was in cover. I wasn't able to strip it because the Hellhound was already dead, and I made him take 5 saves on 3s, and he failed 4 of them. So Canis Rex just died, and when the guys got out, Sir Hector ended up here. I was also able to shoot that down with, I think it was like Lord Solar and friends at this point in the game, and the game just ended from that position. And overall, Cody was a good sport about the whole thing. I think he really underestimated how stupidly effective Bullgryn were going to be at making sure the Lancer was never effective in this game, and I ended up scoring 95 to 51 over the course of the entire game. The Aquilons in this one, they killed the Calidus, and then after that, they were mostly just annoying by being in fun places across the board, scoring me some secondaries. But this one, I ended up doing a little bit better. Like I said, I ended up scoring +3. I expected a 15. I ended up bringing back an 18. Across the rest of the team, we had predicted a 77 score across the entire team. However, everyone on our team got a draw or better. In fact, every single player on my team ended up winning except for Omar because he forgot that there was a spore mine in his deployment zone, and it meant that his opponent got behind enemy lines on turn 5 while he was basically tabled in order to tie the game at 10-10. So if you see Omar and you're watching this video, ask him about the spore mine in round 2 because he's the only person who didn't win his game and he just got a draw. Overall, though, as a team, we ended this one up way higher than our projection. We were predicting a 77. We ended up scoring 123 points as a team, which is 46 higher than we were expecting, which is cool. So we're now 1-1. For our third round of day 1, we ended up playing up against Team Zero Comp Red. And Team Zero Comp was playing Thousand Suns, a Dark Angels Gladiates list, Bringers of Flame Sisters, a Custodes list. I think this one was a little bit offbeat, if I remember correctly. A Guard with Bullgryn list, Hypercrypt Necrons without a monolith, just a lot of little scoring pieces, Grey Knight Dread Knight spam, and Outlander Claw GSC, the thing that like Innes Wilson has been playing. And looking at our matrix for this one, I was okay with it. I was expecting that we were pairing for a pretty close match overall based on what we were looking at, because we had a lot of draws. The composition of factions that we were bringing as a team as Githammer it's probably not an optimal thing. We were definitely missing like Thousand Suns, which I would have loved to have in our pairing matrix. I also really would have loved access to like a Wolf Jail or something. But overall, Team Zero Comp was playing a much more meta set of factions. And that meant that our matrix was looking but I think we did a pretty good job overall. And I ended up pairing into Owen and his guard. Now, Owen said he was mostly a Blood Angels player, but because they already had somebody playing Dark Angels Gladius, and you can't have 2 Space Marine players on the same team, he's like, well, let's go play guard. It's something I used to play a long time ago, and we can go ahead and bring it back for this event. And I gotta say now, playing against Owen may be my favorite game of the entire event. He was just a really pleasant opponent to play against. Owen's list was Lord Solar, a Tempestus command squad with a command rod and attached to 10 guys, a Platoon command squad with a Grand Strategist enhancement, which even he admitted was probably a mistake. It should have been on a tank commander, which I agreed. He had a tank commander with a Demolisher battle cannon and plasma cannons and a las cannon, a unit of Canaan shock troops, 2 units of Catachan jungle fighters, one of them in a Chimera, the other one attached to Lord Solar, 3 units of Bullgryn, 2 Hellhounds with Flamers and Multi-Meltas, 1 Leman Russ battle tank, 1 Rogel Dorn, and then the 10 Scions, like we said, attached to the command squad. Now you'll notice pretty much right away that his list does not have Aquilons, which was a major game changer in the way that you can actually play this matchup out. Overall, I think in general, Owen's list was totally fine. The problem is, 1, it doesn't have Aquilons, and 2, I don't think he fully understood how to pilot it to the maximum effectiveness. He was actually really good at doing the melee portion of the game, and he caught me out with a couple good heroic interventions, which we'll talk about. But he wasn't necessarily recognizing how aggressive you're actually able to be with the Rogel Dorn, especially in the matchup that he was playing into me. Now, once again, we had paired into what we expected was going to be the bottom end of a draw. And we had predicted a score of 78. And as long as we got at least 76 or 75, we were going to have a draw. So we had a little bit of wiggle room. I had predicted a 10-10 for me in this matchup simply because it was mostly the mirror, and of course it depends on who goes first so much. We ended up playing Purge the Foe on Tipping Point with Smoke and Mirrors, the one where you can put things back into reserve. And I ended up going first, which was not great. So right at the outset of the game, I had deployed my Leman Russes pretty evenly, one in basically every firing lane. I had my Hellhound here, the Taurox was here, and I think the Chimera was in front of this Leman Russ. And then our Bullgryn were pretty similarly deployed. I had Bullgryn here, here, and here. He had Bullgryn here, here, here. The Rogel Dorn was here. His tank commander was here. I think his Chimera was here. And then his Leman Russ battle tank was down here. And I ended up going first. And I drew some cards that I really did not like because I got Cleanse and Established Locus. And my problem with going first and also drawing Established Locus is that it asked me to put something in the middle of the board where it can potentially get shot. So the Chimera moved up with a scout move, and the Catachan got out, and stringing them out something like this, such that they were within 6 inches of the center. And then I clustered the rest of my Bullgryn right in here, but I made sure none of my Leman Russes were in positions where they could actually die on turn 1. So I ended up taking my 4, pass over to my opponent. I expected that I was going to be down a little bit, but I wanted to make sure I was at least scoring my points and cycling my cards while I could, just because I knew I needed to put some pressure onto my opponent early on in the game. On his turn, Owen ended up putting his Chimera here and strung out some Catachan here with, I, I don't remember exactly how his Hellhound got here, but he put a Hellhound here, and the Leman Russ battle tank was here. So moved, the Hellhound probably moved like this, and the Chimera came out this way. His Bullgryn, one of these units of Bullgryn ended up chilling here. I think both of them ended up chilling here. Luckily for me, Owen did not put himself in a position where he could actually kill the Catachan. They were hanging out in the middle of the board, which meant that he was not getting kill anything for Purge the Foe going second, which was a really big relief for me because I had expected that I was going to be tied or behind going into turn 2. And I was set up for a really devastating turn 2. So what I ended up doing was these Catachan moved out and put themselves on this objective. And I think he overwatched and killed a couple of them, but most importantly, I still had my flamers, I still had access to my grenade. The Chimera moved up and plopped itself also on the objective. This Leman Russ drew line of sight to this Chimera, and this Leman Russ drew line of sight into something. I don't remember exactly what it was. Yeah, these two Leman Russes came out to here such that they could both shoot at this Hellhound. And then the Taurox moved out here as well. But the most important thing that happened this turn was I had room to drop my Aquilons right back here. And remember, I have this unit, and Owen did not bring it. And the Aquilons killed the entire bodyguard and most of the platoon command squad that Owen had. So he just had a platoon commander and Lord Solar by the time the Aquilons went in. And that crippled his ability to play because Lord Solar now could not give orders to anything. At the same time, between my Catachan and my Chimera, we killed this. And my Leman Russ killed this. My other Leman Russes killed this Hellhound. And I killed a lot of his army. However, I made a pretty crucial mistake in this next part of it. Because I charged the Chimera into whatever this was. Maybe this was a Chimera? Oh no, he had two Hellhounds. So it charged this Hellhound and this tank at the same time. But unfortunately, I did it in such a way that Bullgryn here could heroic intervention and kill my Catachan off this objective and allow my opponent to hold more going into his turn 2. But then, unfortunately, Owen made another mistake. Now, because I had this Chimera touching both the Hellhound and the Leman Russ and the Bullgryn, he ended up falling all of these things back. And I think this went this way. His Lord Solar, who was alone, ran this way and ended up hiding here with some more Bullgryn in here. The Bullgryn that he had here ended up running back in order to kill off the Aquilons, which they did very effectively. However, he also had a platoon commander standing around here, and his tank commander had to back up. And this turn went really, really wrong for Owen. Because the first thing that I did is I noticed that Owen had drawn extend battle lines. And he was going to be able to hold his home pretty easily, but the only objective he was standing on at the end of his movement phase was this objective down here. And this gave me an opportunity to rapid ingress Aquilons and hide them here, because everything over here had already fallen back, and his Rogel Dorn over here was not in a position where it could see them. So by dropping Aquilons on his objective, I was able to deny extend battle lines from my opponent. And I also did it in such a way that he was not going to be able to make a charge with his guys to get into my guys. Or maybe he could have if he rolled like a 12. But either way, it was very difficult for him to do that. And so I'm able to deny my opponents extend battle lines on their turn because he hadn't left enough OC on this objective, and they weren't placed in such a way that he was preventing me from putting guys on the objective. And it's just one of the many dumb things you can do with Aquilons. as my turn 3 comes around, we have to remember that there's Lord Solar here, there's a platoon commander here, and then he's got just a lot of stuff kind of like in here. And all of his Bullgryn are now never getting move, move, move again. If you watch my last tournament after action report, you remember that it was crucial in my game up against Killian and his Chaos Knights that I didn't have any extra movement on the battlefield. And I remember telling Owens, like, I think I kill a bunch of your stuff right now, and then I hide from you for the rest of the game, because I just need to build my lead and maintain it, and I'm going to force you to try and do things with your now slow guard army. But before I do that, I'm able to pull off one more trick. So what I end up doing is on my next turn, I have Aquilons, and I put the sergeant right here such that he is able to see both the platoon commander and Lord Solar. And then the rest of the guys are just hanging out right here. And my goal was to, 1, kill everything off of this home objective, and 2, kill Lord Solar so that he's now CP starved as well. In this sergeant, I actually choose not to use the flamer when he drops so I can chuck a grenade. And I chuck a grenade, kill the platoon commander, and then during the shooting phase, this lights up Lord Solar and kills it. So now, I end up getting this 2-for-1 trade with the Aquilons that makes it almost impossible for my opponent to trade back effectively into me. Oh, the other thing is when he had his tank commander here and I had my Taurox here, he shoots at it, and the Taurox lives with like 3 wounds, and it ends up hiding over here for basically the rest of the game. And yeah, from there, like, Owen was just not able to push very effectively into the rest of the board. I denied him a bunch of primary. We ended up not finishing the game. We only finished 4 rounds. And I ended up winning 13-7. I'm pretty confident that if we had gone to a 5th turn, it probably would have been an even worse loss for Owen just because I had way more things. I had way more control over the board. And I think the biggest, like, conceptual mistake, like I said, was this Rogel Doran never really getting into the game. It had backed up at one point to shoot all the Aquilons over here as they came down. I didn't think that was necessary. But what I had said to him was I think at some point he's supposed to put the Rogel Doran here. And remember, my army is 3 Leman Russes and a Hellhound for like anti-tank shooting. If he had just taken this and then on turn 2 or 3, depending on how the rest of the game was going, just shove this Rogel Doran onto the middle objective, I'm going to have to put my entire budget of damage into trying to kill this thing off the middle objective or ignore it, at which point it becomes this massive threat over the course of the board. But not recognizing that you can just take it basically like a Land Raider and say, I don't think you have the damage to kill this, and force your opponent into a really awkward situations, I think was something that Owen just didn't have the familiarity with the army in order to actually make it work. And ultimately, I do a little bit better than my projections. However, as a team, we do a little bit worse. Now, this is a little bit unlucky because we had Omar end up getting plus 10 from his projections. He had told me he was going to get a 6. He ended up pulling a 16. I said I was going to pull a 10. I ended up pulling a 13. However, unfortunately, we had 2 players tell us that they were going to get draws, and they ended up both getting 1s. And so all the advances that Omar and I had made in this game ended up coming out as being a total of -6 over the entire match. And so we ended up predicting a 78. We ended up scoring a 72, which was 3 points off of the draw that we needed. A couple other players were like within like draw range, within like expectations, right? You know, if you're plus or -2 from what you tell me, like that's basically what I'm expecting anyway. Just the natural variance of being a nice game. So overall, we end day 1 1-2. We won our second round, but we lost our first and third rounds. So you guys all know at this point, I'm a pretty competitive person. But ultimately, I told everybody this, and it's still true. Like, hey, as long as everybody's trying, I don't really care, right? If we win or lose, that's part of why I play with Githammer. Is honestly the vibes are immaculate on the team, and so even though we were 1-2, everybody was still in good spirits. Everybody was still having a great time, and we ended up going back to Victor's place and crashing for the night. We mostly just talked, and I don't know. I was pretty tired, so I don't remember everything we talked about, but Luis was like, yeah, I don't sleep at all. If I get 3 hours of sleep in a night, it's a good day. And we're like, okay, dude, make sure you sleep. But anyway, we get back that night and we already see our round 4 pairings, which is going to be into onboard gaming. And onboard gaming had a lot of players that I didn't recognize. What it turns out was it was up against Taylor, I think it's Petrick, and he was playing with a bunch of guys from a local shop who mostly played Crusades together, but they wanted an opportunity to play at a teams event and just kind of get a feel for it, play a lot of different games of Warhammer, and just kind of get used to what it's like to play the difference between Crusade and the more competitive side. So onboard gaming was playing definitely some less conventional rosters. So onboard gaming was definitely playing some less conventional lists and some less conventional factions that you tend to see in teams events. But they had Bringers of Flame Sisters, a Hypercrypt Necrons list which had no monolith, Blood Angels list that was a little bit offbeat but still sends us Sanguinius, a Callion Tau list, a Million Skitari Admech list, an Imperial Knights list that was also a little bit offbeat, a Death Guard vehicle spam list that we were not used to seeing, and then a more combined arms CSM, which had like Abaddon, some melee units, and some shooting units, but it wasn't like an Abaddon Pact von Zealot's castle or anything like that. And my team went into this one and we were like, we are looking very good with our matrix. We have a lot of really good matchups, and we can put some of our players into matchups that are going to be really, really good for us overall. This was definitely the pairings where we felt the most confident about it going in. And we ended up predicting that we were going to score a 97. Because pretty much everybody had a winning matchup. I think there was only one. Yeah, we only predicted one draw across all of the pairings. I ended up pairing myself into another Imperial Knights player, this time named Isaac. Isaac was playing Canis Rex, a Knight Crusader with the Mysterious Guardian enhancement, one Helverin, one Moirax, I'm not sure how to say it, 3 Warglaves, a Rogue Trader Entourage, a Vindicare Assassin, and 1 unit of Voidsmen at Arms. Now, this was, like I said, a little bit of an offbeat Imperial Knights list. I don't see a Moirax all that often, and generally you don't see the Rogue Traders taken in Imperial Knights either. However, the one thing that I did have to respect was that Knight Crusaders actually kill Bullgryn really efficiently just because of the incredible volume of shots that they can put out. And it's mostly low AP, which doesn't really matter to Bullgryn because Bullgryn have a 4-up normal save and a 4-up invul save, so you're going to put them on the same save pretty much no matter what. But once again, because I was playing into Imperial Knights, I had predicted that I was going to be pulling a 15 for the team. We ended up playing this one on Take and Hold, Hidden Supplies, and Search and Destroy. And one of the things that is a little bit annoying about this mission layout, especially for me, is a normal 9-inch move from Bullgryn is going to put them here and just leave them in the open, which, like I said, with the Crusaders standing here, is just going to annihilate them from across the board. And Isaac did the good thing of actually deploying his Crusader here such that it has really good line of sight down this way. It also has a pretty good line of sight onto this objective. But one of the interesting things that Isaac did was he deployed his Vindicare right in here. And this Vindicare being here ended up coming back to bite him pretty hard, because I had my Hellhound here, a Chimera here with Catachan, and a Taurox here. And I did my scout moves. I actually, when he rolled off, I thought he was going first, because I don't know why, I just did. And so the Chimera scout moves this way, the Taurox scout moves this way, and then I draw Assassination. So what I end up doing is I do a bunch of measuring and say, hey, I think I can put a couple of things in range of that Vindicare. And he's like, yeah, I agree. So the Hellhound moves out to right in here, where it is in range of this Vindicare. The Chimera also gets move, and moves in such a way that it is also now in range of the Vindicare. The Taurox over here also gets move, and I end up rolling 6 on advance, and I end up parking it right in here, where it was not meleeable from these sides. Even though we were playing on a WTC map, we were not playing with the WTC barricade rules for their walls. I end up putting Bullgryn in here, and I think I had my last one like here. I had a Leman Russ here, and I had actually redeployed one of them into strategic reserve. And on my first turn, I kill this. This is cool. And I also have this Chimera is touching this objective. And I think, cool. Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens when Isaac's turn comes around. The other thing that happens on turn 1 is I draw Bring It Down, but I don't actually kill any vehicles, and I decide to hold it. And I think a more experienced player, once they see that I hold Bring It Down, just decide to sit back, right? If you know your opponent has a secondary that is super effective against your army, you don't necessarily give your opponent access to it whatsoever. But Isaac, really fun player to play against, is not that experienced player. He's mostly used to playing Crusades, and what he ends up doing is he has a Warglaive somewhere in here that comes out, and I think it kills this Chimera, and he takes 2 more Warglaives out here, and they hang out on this objective. He establishes a locus with one of these Warglaives here. Oh, Canis Rex is not here. He's actually over here because Isaac only ends up scoring 2 points on Secure No Man's Land. As we go over to my turn 2, the game gets out of hand pretty quickly because I end up bringing in my reserves. I don't remember if my Leman Russ. I think I brought in a Leman Russ somewhere in here, such that I could see one of these. And then the other 2 Leman Russes also move such that they could see down this firing lane. Bullgryn, rush in. Bullgryn, rush in. And I drop some Aquilons back here in order to try and deal with the Rogue Trader entourage that is currently sitting on his home objective. My biggest goal was I didn't expect that I could kill the entire unit, but I was hoping that I could make sure that he has to keep this guy here in order to actually score his home objective every turn. Make sure that the Mysterious Guardian Crusader cannot go up into the sky. And on this turn, I end up rolling pretty hot. Oh, I also drop in big unit of Scions. Oh, I end up killing 3 Armigers. This one dies, and this one dies. I end up getting my 6 on Bring It Down. And you'll notice that that is already way too many units in my opponent's army. He basically just has a Crusader, 2 Armigers left. I think it's like a Helverin and a Moirax, Canis Rex, and then the Rogue Trader entourage. And the Rogue Trader entourage will go in and basically just like hang out with these Aquilons the rest of the game. Canis Rex comes over here and hangs out here. The Crusader actually does a lot of damage to Bullgryn over the next couple of turns, but he just doesn't have enough things. And every single time he tries to go for some play, I just have way too much to respond to it. Because Canis Rex, I know, comes down over this way, and he ends up touching the objective on this side by killing both the Taurox and the guys inside. But because he kills the Taurox in melee, I still have guys on this objective for a little while, and they just put OC there, which is really annoying for him. Scions will run over, the Leman Russes end up killing Canis Rex not that long later, and he really, by the end of the game, just has no Armigers left. I think this Crusader might be alive at the end of the game, but the Rogue Trader... No, the Crusader ends up dying. The only thing he has at the very end of the game is a Rogue Trader unit, and I know this matters, because when he draws no prisoners at the very end of the game, I have Gaunt's Ghost hanging out here. He tries to kill them, fails, ends up taking the 5 points, and the final score that we report ends up being 99 to 39. I think, in general, Isaac didn't really conceptually understand this matchup particularly well. It is possible to play the Knights matchup for like a pretty consistent like 6 into guard if you really want to go for it. But basically what that game plan relies upon is you park something really durable here, like just leaving the Crusader makes a lot of sense, or even just like the Rogue Traders back here where it's hard to get to. Probably not the Rogue Traders in this specific matchup because Aquilons just come and kill them. But the other thing you do is it's kind of hard to shoot down this firing lane unless you already have assets here. And because I had my assets here, it's going to take multiple turns for them to move into that position. So if he had just like dropped it or like moved an Armiger, like advance, and just put it on this objective for a lot of the game, it's pretty hard for me to actually get it off. At the same time, he's just chilling with like Warglaives like here, here, and like Canis Rex is like chilling something like here, such that he is ready to just pounce on me whenever things happen. I'll be scoring like with this general game plan. I'll be scoring like tens every turn, then maybe a 15 now and again. But by constantly threatening to jump guys around here, like this way, and protecting his investment over here rather consistently, and even just like having a Vindicare Assassin just hang out here for most of the game instead of putting it here, he can pretty consistently get like some decent points. It should not be possible for me to put him on less than 51, as long as he plays a defensive game plan overall, which I think is hard to identify, especially as someone if you're relatively new to the competitive side of 40k, and even harder if you are new to the team side of 40k. But overall, I will say that I think Isaac was a lot of fun to play against. He said a couple of things that I really enjoyed, like, hey, whenever me and my friends play, and guardsmen and gaunts, like termagants, just like get into combat with each other, that's a handshake. They are there until that combat is done. And so I did the same thing. I would handshake some like combats over here with the rogue trader and my Aquilons. Like, yeah, that's some good fun over on that side. But anyway, I ended the game 99 to 39, meaning that I pulled a 20 in this game. And overall, my team once again did very well relative to our predictions. I remember at one point I got a couple updates from my teammates, and they were saying things are going well. I'm going to be pulling a big win. And so basically, what I gave my instructions to the rest of the team is like, hey, we are in a very comfortable position. Just make sure both you and your opponent are having a good time. Like we don't, we're going to win. Don't worry too much about it. We're in a good spot. And from what I heard, I think a lot of the other tables were also having a good time. At least my team was having a lot of fun on our games, and hopefully the onboard gaming team was as well. Uh, One of the fun things that happened was my roommate Ben ended up playing against their team captain Taylor, and I gotta say, so if you're a longtime viewer of the channel, you will remember that I played up against Taylor at the last team's event, and there was a moment where we were like both a little bit on edge because he had just had a rough game, um, with like some disagreements from his opponent previously, and then I remember I was a little bit on edge for whatever reason. We had a disagreement over like when dice were rolled, whose clock they were on, and that was a tough moment. The rest of the game was great though. Really enjoyed playing against Taylor, and I like Taylor a lot. The thing that I really like about Taylor is he's very precise with his movements, and he also as his opponent is. And as someone who also really likes being precise with my movements, I think it very naturally lends itself to a game where we're both on the same page and we're both having a good time. Anyway, but he ended up playing against my roommate Ben, and Ben had a lot of ignore mods, and he was playing up against Skitari Hunter cohort, or whatever it's called, where everything is supposed to have stealth, and Tao goes, don't care. And so my buddy Ben ended up pulling out a really big win there, which was cool. We ended up winning this one 100 with 136 points, which was 39 more than we predicted. Actually, we ended up getting more points in this round than we did in round 2. However, we had also predicted that we were going to get a lot more points this round, so it ended up being less of a above our matrix than our round 2 was. So we end round 4 going 2-2, and that means that we are in a position where we're not really playing for anything, but we're playing for fun. We actually even asked the judges, hey, is it okay if we adjust the pairings a little bit in order to make us play up against the other Githammer team? Because I think the other Githammer team had 1 win, 2 losses, and a draw, so we could have plausibly paired into each other anyway. Judges told us no, though, and we ended up playing up against Doom Spiral, which is a team that I've recognized some of their players because I had gone to a Game Ogre RTT recently, which is, I can't remember exactly what the town is called, but it's a ways out west from LA proper. Doom Spiral was running a Dark Angels Gladius list, a Melee Marine CSM list, Monster Mash Tyranids, Retaliation Cadre Tau, Eldar with Avatar, and a big Wraith Guard, whatever the one with like the weird Melta is. A mixed Khorne and Nurgle Demons list, a Custodes Talons of the Emperor, the one with reactive moves, and Awakened Dynasty Necrons with a bunch of Immortals and Warriors and like the Armor of Contempt character. Interesting list. I had actually played against this guy previously at another RTT as well. Actually, two RTTs. He's beaten me both times, but they were both close games. Now, fun thing about this one, this is something I learned at the end of the round, is I was talking to their captain, whose name was Zach, who I'd actually paired myself into, and both of us said that we were expecting that we were a slight edge, like slightly top end of the draw. He said he was predicting an 82 for his team, and then our side, based on just like some quick mental math, I didn't have time to like actually do the full things. I thought it was going to be an 82 for our side, which meant that both of us were like expecting that it was probably going to be a draw. So, like I said, Zach was playing a Retaliation Cadre Tau. He had Commander Farsight, Dark Strider, a Commander in Cold Star with Internal Grenade Racks, a Commander Enforcer with a Starflare Ignition System, one Crew Carnivores, one Pathfinders, three Stealth Battlesuits, one Fire Knife with Missile Pods, one Starsuit with Burst Cannons, one Sunforge with Fusions, two Hammerheads, one Piranha, and three Riptides. For our last game of the day, we were playing on Lynchpin, Raise Banners, and Search and Destroy. Now, my most recent experience against Retaliation Cadre was I had played up against Jason McKenzie's Retaliation Cadre Tau at Hammer of Wrath, and Jason is a very, very good Tau player, and I held him to a game that was a 1-point difference. So I was very confident that I was going to be pulling a draw pretty much no matter what. No shade to Zach, but there's not Retaliation Cadre players that are better than Jason in our area. So I had told my team that I was predicting to pull a 10. This game was pretty entertaining. One of the things that ended up happening was we were getting really close to time because we were both our team's captains, and so a lot of people were coming to us to like ask rules questions, and also we had to call over the judges a couple of times for a couple of rules clarifications and to make a charge call. But basically, my game plan in this game was if I went first, I had Bullgryn like here, here, and here, and if I went first, I was going to step on the gas. Because that is exactly what Jason McKenzie had told me to do after our last matchup that we had played. If I had taken move, 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 put Bullgryn here, move, 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 these Bullgryn, and potentially go for a charge into stealth suits, and then move, move, move these Bullgryn, and advance them to like here, I'm suddenly putting a ton of pressure on, and suddenly the Retaliation Cadre does not have enough damage to kill all of these Bullgryn efficiently, even with a triple Riptide. And then, between the Scions and the Aquilons, I have enough tools to basically make sure the battlefield is something like this, so I can keep my opponent off of primary rather effectively in doing so. Unfortunately, I go second, so I'm not able to put that into practice, but the good side of this is I'm going second on Lynchpin, which means that I have an opportunity to score really big right at the end. The details aren't really super important because we end up trading a lot of pieces over the game, but turns 2, 3, and 4, both of us are scoring 3 points on Lynchpin because nobody ever holds any of these objectives at all on any of those turns. However, by the time we get to top of 4, when it's Zach's turn, the judges start going around. They're saying like, "Hey, you have like 10 minutes left. Play fast." So we both agree like, "Hey, we're gonna keep playing until the judges call like actual time, like hard dice down." As long as we both agree like we're just gonna be playing like shorthand 40k. We're just gonna be doing as much movement as necessary, and we're just going to be playing. It's going to be sloppy gameplay, but we're both going to mostly agree. It's like, yeah, you can do that. Yeah, you can do that. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that shoots that. Yeah, that makes sense. Move, move, move. And I guarantee if we had played out this game more accurately at the very end, like we would have, it would have been a different score if we had played that way. However, we were just trying to play as quickly as possible. Whenever something we thought was important was going to happen, we rolled it out. But a couple of things ended up breaking in both people's favor. So the first one was, at one point, I have a unit of Bullgryn, I think they're Bullgryn, here, and he has a Riptide that's in combat with them. I have a unit of Scions strung out something like this. The major point being I was trying to zone out like the Sunforge unit from coming down over here, and I think he's able to find a spot for them anyway. What ends up happening, so one of the first judge calls is he wants to move the Riptide, fall it back like this, but I want to go for the Overwatch because I'm getting the full rerolls because he's on an objective at the beginning of it, and Big Guns Never Tire allows you to shoot an Overwatch into a vehicle because that part of it does not say only in your shooting phase. It just says you are allowed to shoot these targets whenever you want. So I end up getting a judge. Takes a little bit of time to resolve. We ended up determining that yes, I can do it. And so the Scions end up going and they kill the Riptide during the movement. However, I don't know if this was good for me because he had a unit of Kroot that was hanging out back here, and this unit of Kroot was able to string out between these two objectives and deny me both of them because he's able to put enough OC. But one of the things that I did try and do was I tried to rapid ingress Aquilons like right in here in order to flame them, and I killed enough of them, or I kill some of them, but I don't kill enough of them to actually get me either of these objectives going into turn 3, 4, whichever one it was. So that was a very interesting turn overall. The other major time that we had a judge call that was really important was I had a Leman Russ somewhere in here, and he had a Riptide here. And basically what happened was this Leman Russ had survived on like 2, I think it's 2 wounds, and he wanted to go for a tank shock with the Riptide. And he ended up rolling a 7-inch charge. And it was really, really close. Because basically what the question was if he could move straight line directly this way, it was absolutely within 7. However, the major question that arose was, 1, does he need to pivot? Because we weren't playing with this exact terrain. I think we were playing with like terrain like this. Does he need to pivot his Riptide because of the direction that it's facing? And 2, does he need to go a little bit that direction because the edge of the base will catch the wall that was here? And neither of us were comfortable like making that decision on our own because it was really impactful. If he makes the charge and doesn't have to re-roll it, suddenly that means that he can tank shock. And that matters a lot because if this Riptide can kill this Leman Russ on the charge, it takes away a lot of my remaining damage. So I end up calling a judge over. The judge rules that yes, the charge does go off, and he's able to get the tank shock and ends up killing the Russ. But that takes up probably another like 5 to 10 minutes to resolve. And ultimately, this one happened to go into his favor. I also happened to roll like a 6 on my save with a Leman Russ versus a Hammerhead, which was great, which meant that the Leman Russ actually lived. So there was a lot of like really small moments where it's like, ooh, I don't know exactly whether or not this ends up working out and whose favor it ends up going in. But either way, those were some of the judge calls that end up coming through. The end of the game, as we're playing super, super quickly, again, is at the very end, we've been scoring 3-3-3, and then Zach also scores a 3, only holding his home in turn 5. And at the very end, I end up being able to stand on this objective, on this objective, on this objective, and on this objective for 18 points of primary. And the end score of the game is 72-54, which ends up becoming a 13-7. Now, for people who have played teams before, you'll know that 5 points, or every 5 points of differential is an extra point. So literally the entire differential in this game comes from the fact that we were playing Linchpin. I went second, and I scored all 3 objectives in No Man's Land. Overall, it was a really fun game. I'm trying to think if there's anything super instructional in this game that came up. I think like this Overwatch that I was talking about is maybe one of them, but eh. I think one of the big things that I did realize is, so he had a unit of stealth suits here, and I was able to bring in some Aquilons here. One of the things that I was trying to hedge my bets on was if you shoot your sentry, most TOs are currently ruling that you cannot chuck a grenade after that. Like if you drop and then shoot your sentry immediately, you cannot shoot a grenade, or you cannot use a grenade later. And that's how I was playing it, at least at this event. if you want Aquilons to consistently kill a stealth suit unit, you need to throw a grenade. The flamer is going to do like 1 damage, and you really, really need to do that extra 2 or 3 damage that's going to be coming out with the grenade in order to try and kill the stealth suit unit. Because this stealth suit unit, I think, lost 1 model. So that was worth noting. I remember thinking like, oh, there's so many things I want to throw grenades at, but if I'm going to try and commit to killing a unit, especially if I'm going to be committing a Aquilons unit, which is so versatile over the course of the game, I need to make sure the thing dies. I think that's it overall. Looking at everything, I predicted I was going to pull a 10, ended up pulling a 13, which was pretty cool. But one of the major things that ended up happening was I had a couple of teammates come over to me at different points during the game and ask, or just like let me know, hey, things are not going the way they're supposed to. My opponent hit a 9-inch charge. I missed like a 5-inch charge. Everything that was supposed to be like all these like small luck moments were not going our way. So I remember in a panic going and like talking to all my different players, like, hey, is it possible for you to push for more points? If you can, we need you to do it. And what this ended up meaning was that my Blood Angels player and my Orcs player both ended up trying to push for even more, and things went terribly wrong. And unfortunately, both Victor and Michael, the Blood Angels and Orcs player, we were predicting 12s from both of them. They both ended up getting zeros for a minus 24 on our matrix. And even though I pulled out a +3, Luis's sisters pulled out a +3, and Omar's CSM pulled out a +6 relative to our matrix, it didn't end up mattering because of how unfortunate those two games were. I told them like, hey, I would rather tell them to push and go for a win. I'm much more interested in playing for a win than I am in playing for a draw, especially because we're not playing for anything. And so we end up losing this one. We had predicted to get an 80. We ended up pulling out a 66. So overall, at the end of this event, we go 2 wins and 3 losses. I end up going above Matrix by 3 or more points in 4 of my games, and I go way below the Matrix in our first game. If I had pulled out, if I had gotten to 8 like I had expected I would, we would have actually drawn. So if I had gone first, or if I had made a couple of crucial different plays in our first match, we could have had a draw at the very beginning. So I was kicking myself a little bit, but I mean, looking at the rest of our matrix also getting below what they were expecting, I was a bit less concerned because it was still a differential that our team should have been able to make up. So unfortunately, it just felt like we were outscaled in our first one. With that said, our 3 losses that we had, we pulled out a 67, which is, a small to medium loss, a 72, which is a really close loss, and a 66 in a position where we had decided we would rather play for the win than play for the draw. And I think if both of our and because we had a 66, if we had gotten the 24 points like we had expected, that would have put us at a 90 instead of a 66. So ultimately, it ends up being totally fine, and it was a decision that we had made kind of as a team. I do want to give a big shout out again to my roommate Ben for coming in as a last minute sub and also tying for the person who did the best on our team. He got 23 more points than we had projected him to throughout the course of our pairings, and he went above the matrix 3 times and on the matrix twice. That was tied with Omar, who did the same thing. He got 23 more points than we projected him to, above matrix 3 times and on matrix twice. So really good stuff coming out from those 2 players in particular. Really happy to have them on my team. But yeah, it's getting late. It's already past 3 a.m. as I'm recording this, so I'm probably going to wrap this up pretty soon. Other thoughts? What do I have coming up? Yeah, so I have Cali Cup coming up in a couple of weeks. If anybody is going to be there for that, it is going to be in San Diego, California. I'll be staying with a couple of other Git guys down there. I am signed up for the Mad Alpaca GT in Fairfield, California, and I'm still probably planning to go to the Battle Shocked GT, which is also in the general Bay Area. So if anybody wants to go to those, go ahead and let me know. Before I sign off, I do want to give a big shout out once again to all of the members who have been supporting this. I ran into a couple of different people at the event. Owen, my guard mirror player, was like, yeah, it was I learned a lot. I would love to learn more about guard stuff. Isaac was saying that he had really wanted to run into some streamers, and I was like, well, I kind of count. I'm somewhere on that. Some people like paying attention to what I say. And then I also ran into one of my channel subs, and I think members, uh, Bort. I keep pulling. Never mind. But anyway, they had been asking, like, hey, if you're going to SoCal, is there anyone who is here who likes, or who's looking for teammates? And I pointed him out. He ended up being on one of the team, or he and his friend ended up being on a couple of teams that did pretty well. So that was really exciting to see. And also, I think his name is Michael. Shout out to Michael, who was playing for Team Pup and Suds. Thank you so much for being a sub to this one as well. I got to meet a lot of cool players who are also guard players that I get to meet in person. So hopefully you guys had a good time at the event. At this point, I'm just kind of rambling, so I think I'm going to go ahead and sign off here and get myself to bed, and I'll edit this one in the morning. So thank you so much for everybody who tuned in. Thank you so much to all the Githammer guys who are on my team for this. I had a lot of fun. We are looking at going to a couple more teams events, such as California Teams Championships and Challengers Cup, which are both next year. That should all be a good time. But for now, I'm going to sign off, and I will see you guys all next time. Bye-bye.